Alright, let's do this one more time. These guys are Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, and they were hit by a canister of ooze which changed them from 4 tiny pet turtles into these anthropomorphic creatures, where for the last 39 years they've been the one and only Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell, turtle power. They've been around the block for a while, where alongside their rat of a father Splinter, they've been protecting the streets in New York, stopping mutant bananas, alien shredders, robotic ninjas, and along the way they've made a couple of friends named April and Casey. And at one point they had a lady turtle, but we don't talk about that one.
What the fuck is that?
They began as a comic series, then entered into a TV show, then toys, and eventually movies, where they danced with Vanilla Ice, teamed with the Power Rangers, and even had a live touring show. And we don't talk about that one either.
You didn't see anything, right?
But as their audience always will, they've evolved with various styles, voices, and tonal changes over the years, creating a divide among fans over which version of them is the best.
I'm better than you.
And while I agree that their televised and cinematic history has been up and down more times than a yo-yo, I believe there's much to appreciate of them beyond the parameters of your generation. And regardless of how many hits they take with poor conceptions, adaptations, and writers, they always find a way to get back up. And if you'd like proof of that yo-yo in action, look no further than this return to prominence following the last Ronin comic series, where our heroes prove once again why they love being turtles.
God, I love being a turtle!
But honestly, I'm a little divided by what the movie does well and what it fails to achieve. So once again, I am in a state of ambivalence towards the Turtles movie. I want to preface this by acknowledging that I am much older than this movie's demographic, but I still have a high reverence for TMNT, as I grew up with the 90s, 07 and Michael Bay movies, and the 03 and 2012 shows. So the Turtles have always been there in some form or another, and I'd like to say that I have a solid understanding of these universal archetypes, characters, relationships, feuds, agencies, etc., which should help me decipher what did and what didn't quite cut it here.
Prove it, ding dong!
And with all that knowledge, I headed into this prepared to see a lot of similarities to pre-established ideas and designs from almost 4 decades of content. But what I can tell you is that I was not prepared for most of this, and I'm still undecided whether a lot of it was good or bad. So journey with me as I provide a blanket recap of this movie's premise, then we'll dive into it.
Cool.
We start this one by seeing a flashback to the creation of this movie's misguided antagonist, Superfly, who is just one of the handful of creations managed by Dr. Baxter Stockman, who's quickly hunted by TCRI forces after he created something they want, but due to the sheer incompetence of the task force at hand, he's killed in the melee, and Superfly grabs his family members and flees, while the remaining mutagen that Stockman created falls into the sewers, landing on the Turtles, who come in contact with Splinter, and we all know the rest. 15 years later though, we see the Turtles parading round the city and longing for a life where they don't have to live in the sewers and can appreciate all that humanity has.
There is not enough room or tolerance on this planet for another species!
As Splinter chooses to live below due to a few bad experiences with humanity both after they transformed and when he was just a rat. The boys, however, are growing and wishing for the simple things in life like cinema, girls, pizza, and high school.
What are you, fucking stupid?
To try and obtain this life that they long for though, they plan to interrupt a slew of crimes being committed across the city by Superfly and have this evidence to the world to show that they aren't bad.
You're all going to burn! We're all going to die! You don't know what you're doing!
And along the way, they befriend April, who agrees to support them in their plan as she wants to undo the perception of her, where following her debut on a news broadcast for a school, she proceeded to vomit everywhere out of nervousness and has been ridiculed ever since.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And after a montage of major butt-kicking action, the group track down Superfly and his family, who have become embittered with humanity, following its rejection of them, and plan to weaponize various pieces of TCRI tech to disperse the mutagen over wildlife across the planet and enslave humans for everything that they've done to them.
You know why? Because you, that's why.
The Turtles, of course, take issue with this and try to intercept Supergang's plan, but it ends with the villains getting away and the boys are captured by TCRI, who string them up and plan to milk them for their blood.
Why are you the way that you are?
While April retrieves Splinter so that they can make the save, with the heroes banding together to stop Superfly. And following a riveting speech from the Turtles to try and appeal to the rest of Superfly's family, everyone else turns on Superfly, who wants to see this through. But as the battle is won, the war begins when Superfly is dropped into the ocean with a mutagen bomb and he fuses with other wildlife below, creating a super duper fly who rampages through the city. The mutants band together to take him down, with the plan being to use some TCRI retro mutagen to destroy him, while April overcomes her fear and broadcasts this to the world, showing the truth of the Turtles and to get the mutants over with humanity. Where we end on them being accepted by society and they join the local high school following their respective interests. And for the mid-credit scene, we see that TCRI executive Cynthia Outram has caught an unmutated Superfly and wishes to capture the Turtles, so she tells her men to call in their last resort, which is revealed to be the Shredder.
It's over. We are screwed.
Now, there's much to this movie that could be mentioned and discussed, but I just want to focus on the few things I felt did well, and as I said at the start, things that didn't stick the landing. Starting with the weaker elements that begin with our fan favourite Rat Attack. Splinter certainly isn't Splinter in this for me, and I genuinely cannot fathom what the creative decision for this interpretation was. The portrayal of him in this is one of the weakest I've ever seen, and quite frankly, the design, the fixation of his character, personality, moral stance, and presentations were some of the biggest disappointments from this entire movie. Throughout all of the iterations of Splinter we've had, he's understanding, compassionate, wise, patient, elusive, and reserved, and carries an understanding that humanity has its faults, but he doesn't carry half the prejudice towards them as this version of him does. And I can appreciate that by the end he starts to open himself up to the possibility that they aren't as bad as he thought, as the boys want to become part of that life, but throughout this he's cowardly, skeptical to an unhealthy degree, and I'd almost say nihilistic.
Grab a napkin, homie. You just got served.
It feels like this Splinter loses all semblance of meaning and the values his character has always cherished, which have remained consistent across this vast multiverse of troublesome terrapins, so it feels like a major disservice to a legacy character.
No. He's got a point.
And to be honest, it feels like this Splinter is just a diluted version of the powerful fuzzball we know him to normally be, and the one fight sequence that we had in this does not make up for a movie of poor decisions with the heart of this group. And I will clarify here as well that Splinter having a love interest wasn't an issue as such, as he does have one in the 2012 series, previously being human there and having a daughter with his late wife. But here, to cram in the relationship with a female cockroach was actually rather disturbing. And I can see what Seth and the writers are trying to tell us here in that love is love, but when it looks like that, you're gonna get fucking judged. As for the Turtles themselves, I didn't mind the designs so much, though they were jarring to see initially, but I guess my quarrel with the boys in this is their voices and the dialogue throughout this. I'll reiterate again, I know I'm not the demographic for this version of them, but there has to be a line in which most people can rationalise the voices behind these guys. And I know that Seth felt that teenagers would be better suited for teenage roles, which I get, but no offence to the lads, as they did do a decent job, but damn was this difficult to sit through and hear the Turtles this way.
Make it stop!
I think after all these years I've started to appreciate the older generations acting out as these teenagers. You can absolutely say that my biased feeling around these guys is getting in the way here, but I'd argue that the combination of voices and characters in the other animated material and in the past in general have come off feeling more natural than this.
Well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Each Turtle's voice in the past has reflected their design and the personality that they possess, and rarely have the casting choices ever done wrong for me, but here, the young lads that they had to voice the gang felt like it was trying to push two magnets together. Couple that as well with the scripting, it made for a rather disappointing experience, as you've got the talent, but the writing and combination of it all just comes off as hollow. I understand as well that the use of the dialogue is reflective of the modern age, and I may not be up to date on my index for that, but many of the quips and pop culture references will come off feeling dated eventually, as the Michael Bay movies have already begun to feel. But as for the boys themselves, they were perfectly likeable with relatable desires that hits that teenage quota that Seth wanted here, but I admire the balls to put the Turtles in this situation where they have normal desires as your average teenage boy would, but I think it takes something away from the Turtles too, as you remove that impact to them now being publicly outed and easy to find. And this could still retain the tension you'd have if they were hidden in the shadows and discovered later, as now it's just a matter of when than if, but the Turtles have always felt more effective from the shadows.
Alrighty then.
Then the last weak spots of this movie came from all except Superfly in the villains category. And you can't say for 1 second that these guys were villains, as they never did act in any malicious manner, and their desires align with the Turtles in wanting public acceptance. But this felt like an unnecessary misdirect from trailer footage, as it generated this swell of anxiety and excitement at the very prospect of an army against the Turtles in a sort of mutant war. But instead what we got was one competent villain and a merry band of mutant morons.
He's out of line, but he's right.
The majority of them were likeable, but honestly had nothing to contribute to the narrative other than their connection to Superfly and fulfilling that reality that Stockman wanted in life, to be accepted and to find a family, which is rather sweet, but it does disrupt what I've come to know of this bunch too. I don't hate this decision, as a lot of the antagonists in TMNT have been rather goofy in the past, and the majority of the time are coerced into their situations by virtue of the Shredder or Turtles, and simply are struggling to deal with the cards they've been dealt. But I think once again, I found it difficult to engage with them due to their voices. And the unfortunate part to this movie as well is the lack of the Shredder. He is as much of a staple to the TMNT franchise as Stockman is, but is now seemingly being used as an agent for what I assume may be the Utroms in a potential sequel, which is just another subversion I can't say I'm too keen on, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But before I get out of here, I can't just leave you with the thought that this was a complete letdown, so let's take it from the top. Superfly was a fascinating villain and possessed the most agency for the story, pushing everyone into position with the radical ideals, unwavering determination and jaded attitude, born from a hatred towards anything unlike him that just wanted love and a family. However, his mission corrupted his mind and drove his attention away from what made them special. But in a twisted way, he gave his family everything they could have ever wanted in social acceptance and a home with the Turtles and Splinter, which they never would have found had he done his own thing. I didn't hate April in this, and I frankly thought that she'd be one of the weaker elements to this version of TMNT, as most of the time in the movies, they never write her in with anything meaningful to do and just have her there to be saved all the time, which they did carry over to this, but after the Turtles did her a solid, she returned the favour, so it was a mutual alliance that blossomed into a friendship which I rather enjoyed. She wasn't overwhelming in her delivery, and the race swap shouldn't be as big of a deal as I think many are making it out to be, as even the creators can't decide what she definitively looks like in the original comics, but everything since then has made her out to be white until the 2018 series that took a sudden turn, but honestly this shouldn't be a point of contention. The art style was, for want of a better word, unique, as it carries the appearance of a 5-year-old's drawing stretched across a 3D environment, and most of it looks familiar based on the works of the Spider-Verse that tackles various styles and will no doubt introduce something similar down the road, but the stylization and practicality to all of this was equally refreshing as it was confusing, but I respect what they tried to achieve here. The tone of this film, I felt, had its moments of inconsistency, and the jovial nature to the boys during the fights and intense situations didn't land as well as I thought it could have, but the atmosphere was there, the themes were representative of the current day just without kicking you in the dick to get it across, and the soundtrack was decent, including the fucking ninja rap. And when the levity worked, it worked, and it did get a few chuckles from me, and the final minutes of the movie were intense and hard-hitting, but visually engaging in various ways as well, whether it be with the characters or environments, and as a modern spin on the Turtles, it will no doubt resonate with younger viewers, but I do stand by my point that it will become dated quicker than the writers might like. But as I felt with the Michael Bay movies, I am rather ambivalent towards this one too. And despite the abundance of creative decisions that did pack this out with enjoyment, there is sadly a lot of this that just comes off feeling forced and unnatural, and I truly wanted to love it and gave it a fair chance, but this is as honest as I can be as a long-time Turtles fan. Anyway though, if you have any thoughts regarding this iteration of the Heroes in a Half Shell, drop them down below, but otherwise, that's all I've got for this one. If you like what you saw here, hit the thumbs up and be sure to subscribe, and until next time everyone, take care, and I'll catch you later.